So, here it is, the chimney. The story of Christmas, right? The true story of Christmas, right? Santa Claus fits in there, the big guy goes down, drinks milk and cookies, everybody gets a lot of presents, and that's Christmas, right? Or is there a deeper, better, richer story that we all need to hear at Christmas time? It is about somebody with us, not somebody coming down a chimney, but it's a bigger, better story. Well, this is part of the story of Christmas. But I'm going to be a little more comfortable if I'm down inside the house, so join me there. So I'm going to jump into the story somewhere in the middle. We don't have enough time to start at the very beginning. I'm going to remind you that there was a man named Abraham who had a son of the promise named Isaac. Isaac grew up, but Isaac didn't seem like he was in a hurry to get married. In fact, when he was 40 years old, finally his mother and father had to arrange a marriage for him. And it wasn't until he was 60 years old that finally his wife, Rebecca, became pregnant with their first child. He's 60, she's a little younger than that, and she's gonna have a baby. Well, it turns out she's gonna have more than one baby. She's gonna have two babies. Yeah, there are twins within her. Finally, the day of the birth comes, and Rebecca is pushing, and the first one is born. It's a boy. He's a redhead, and he's a hairy redhead. In fact, they named him Esau, which means, in their language, red. Now, even as Esau was being born, so he comes out, and grabbing on his heel is his younger brother. Now, in their language, they named him Jacob because that means something like the one who grabs on the heel, and it kind of means the one who trips up the other one. Jacob was not hairy, he was not a redhead. Now, those weren't the only two ways that these boys were different. They were also different in terms of what they liked to do. Esau was an outdoorsy guy, loved to hunt. Jacob, not so much. Jacob liked to be around the ranch, he liked the animals, but the farm animals. He took care of them. He liked to cook. And in fact, it was his cooking skills that really got them in trouble. Oh, but before I tell you that, I need to tell you another little problem there was in this family. Father Isaac liked one son best, and Mother Rebecca liked another son best. Can you imagine it? So Isaac liked Esau best, whereas Mother Rebecca really loved Jacob the most. And between that and the way these boys were different, well, you'll see what happens. One day, Esau was out doing his hunting thing. He came back. I don't know if he'd been gone maybe several hours, maybe several days, I don't know. But at any rate, he comes back home. He's starving after being out hunting. And here is Jacob. And Jacob's been cooking. He's been making this stew, a really rich, delicious stew. And the smell of it just gets to Esau, and Esau's like, Jacob, give me some stew, man. Jacob says, well, what will you give me for it? Would you give me your birthright for some of this stew? Now, you've got to remember, in those days, everything that belonged to mother and father would go to the firstborn son. It wasn't going to be split evenly between the two boys. Everything belonged to Esau, and that inheritance they called the birthright. It was his right by birth. Jacob said to Esau, Sure, I'll give you some delicious stew if you give me the birthright. Now Esau thinks to himself, of what good to me is the birthright if I die here on the spot of hunger? He said, of course I'll give you the birthright. Just give me some food. So Jacob says, will you swear to it? Will you shake on it? Esau says, yeah, of course, just give me some food. So they make the deal. And now the younger son, Jacob, is entitled to everything when mother and father pass away. Esau sits down. He eats the stew. Jacob throws in a little extra bread. And when he's done, Esau simply gets up and walks away. But it gets even worse than that. Father, Isaac, decided the end was near. He was about ready to die. He thought he was on his deathbed. So he called in his oldest son, Esau, and he said, Esau, I want you to go out. I want you to hunt some game down, cook it up, bring it in. I'm going to eat it, and then I'm going to give you the blessing. Now, the blessing is different than the birthright. The birthright is the stuff of mother and father. It's the inheritance. It's the physical stuff. But the blessing is the stuff of God. The blessing is this being in the center of God's story. So it's a very important passing from father to son of the blessing. Esau gets his bow and arrow and goes out. He's happy. He's going to get the blessing. Yeah, he didn't get the birthright, but he'll get the blessing. Well, mother has overheard these instructions to Esau. So now she calls in, remember the son she loves, she calls in Jacob and says, Jacob, your father's going to give Esau the blessing today, but I'm going to get it for you. Jacob says, Mom, do you think that's a good idea? What if father figures it out and decides instead of blessing me to curse me? Now, you've got to know, for this to work at all, you have to know the only reason it can work is because Isaac is blind. Isaac can't see. So Jacob's plan, his mother's plan, is to trick father into giving the blessing to the younger son, not to the older son. So the mother says, just do as I say. Don't worry. If he curses you, the curse will be on me. It won't be on you. Here's all you have to do. Go out in the corral, kill 2 young goats, bring them into me, skin and all. In the meantime, she gets some of Esau's best clothes. Apparently Esau smelled a bit and had a distinctive smell, so she got some clothes and she had Jacob put on Esau's clothes so he would smell right. And then she makes the food and she prepares it, bread and this wonderful food that only she knew how to cook in the way her husband would so much enjoy it. But he is still not convinced. Jacob says, but mother, he's going to know it's not me. And she said, don't you worry about that, honey. She put on his arms and neck the skins of the goats. Because remember, he was smooth-skinned and his brother Esau was hairy. So they're both thinking, what if he reaches out to touch me? He's going to figure out I'm not Esau, but if he reaches out and he touches the goat skin, he'll think, oh yeah, that's Esau, a hairy guy. So here's Jacob. He's got the food, he's got the bread, he's got goat skins on his neck and on his arms. He's wearing his brother's clothes, and now he goes in and father says, who is it? And he says, it's me, Esau. Father says, well, that's funny. It sounds like the voice of Jacob. Come nearer. So he comes nearer to his father and he gives him the food, and the father eats the food and it's very good, just like he likes. And then he reaches out and he touches Jacob's arm. And he feels the goat skin and he's like, oh yeah, that's Esau, all right, hairy guy. But he's still not fully convinced. So he says to Jacob, come nearer, my son. So Jacob comes nearer. He leans in to give him a kiss. And when his head is right here, Isaac smells him. And he says, oh yeah, that's Esau, all right. Now I will give you my blessing, my son. So he puts his hand on Jacob, thinking it's Esau, and says, you will always have plenty of food and drink. Your brothers will serve you, and anyone who blesses you will be blessed, and anyone who curses you will be cursed. Everything's going to go great for you. Amen. The blessing has been given. Jacob leaves the room. Well, no sooner has Jacob left the room than you know who comes in. So here's Esau, and he's got his food already. And the father said, who is it? And Esau said, it's me, Esau. And the father starts to tremble. Oh, well, if that's you, son, who was just here? And they both kind of know who was just there. It's little brother. So Esau comes in, and the father says, I have no blessing for you. I gave the blessing to your brother. Esau starts to cry. A grown outdoorsman just crying. First the birthright, now the blessing. And he said, but father, surely you have saved something for me. The father, Isaac, said, the blessing has been given. I can't take it back. They're both trembling at what has happened, the magnitude of what has just happened here. Esau said, something, father? Isaac said, here's all I've got. You will live far out in the country. You will live a rough life. But one day you will rise up and throw off the yoke of your brother. That was Esau's blessing. As he left the room, everyone could hear him making threats. The threat was, as soon as father dies and the days of his mourning are past, I will kill Jacob. Well, mother, Rebecca, heard this. She called in Jacob and she said, Jacob, you've got to leave here. You can't stay. It's not safe for you. Run. Go back to my people. Find my relatives, and you'll be safe there. When your brother's anger has cooled off, I'll send for you. But don't come back until I send for you. So Jacob quickly made up a little bundle of clothes, and he took off on the long journey, several weeks' journey, to get to where his mother was from. When Jacob arrives at his mother's city, he finds her brother, and he finds his two cousins. One cousin is named Rachel, and he really likes her. She's beautiful, she's good-looking in every way. He falls madly in love with her. The other cousin is named Leah, and he doesn't like her that much. She's not that attractive. So very quickly he asks if he could marry Rachel. And his mother's brothers say, yeah, I'll let you marry Rachel if first you work for me 7 years. Jacob said, it's a deal, put her there. So they agreed to this arrangement. Back in those days, it was very common to have arranged marriages like that. So after 7 years, finally Jacob comes to Laban and says, okay, the time's up, it's time to marry Rachel. So they have the wedding. All the people are invited to come to it. It's nighttime in the desert. People have perhaps drunk a little bit too much. It's dark out, starry skies. And after all the festivities, finally Jacob goes into the marriage tent, where finally he's going to be able to embrace his wife Rachel. He gets in the tent and it's dark. What he doesn't know is that father-in-law Laban has switched women. And instead of giving Jacob Rachel, at the last minute he has slipped into the tent the older sister, the not so pretty sister, the one he doesn't love. He has slipped Leah into the tent. They consummate the marriage, and the next morning Jacob wakes up and rolls over, and yikes, here is not the woman he had expected to marry. He's married the wrong woman. So he storms out of there, he goes to see Laban, and he says, like, "What have you done?" Laban said, "Well," he says, "I tell you what, I'll let you marry Rachel if you work for me 7 more years. A total of 14 years. Well, what else can he do? Jacob says, "Okay, I will. But I'm not going to wait 7 years. And Laban said, "That's right. You can marry her in 1 week, but then you're going to have to work 7 more years. So he works 7 more years and he marries Rachel. Now he's married to the 2 sisters, right? And they're not getting along too well. Of course, he loves the one and he doesn't love Leah. But it turns out that Leah is the one who's able to have babies. Rachel can't have any babies. And Leah has first 1 son and another son and a 3rd son and a 4th son, and she's like, nah, 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 nah. You know, I'm the one having all the babies, and the one that's loved is not having any babies. So there's this fight going on in the family. So Rachel says, I've got an idea. She calls in her servant girl, and she says to the servant girl and to Jacob, I want you 2 to get together and have a baby, and it'll be like mine. So Jacob says, okay. So this servant girl of Rachel now is pregnant, and she has a baby. Leah sees this and says, well, 2 can play that game, little sister. So she gets her servant girl. And so you've got the 2 sisters and the 2 servants. You've got 4 women. They're all having babies. Eventually, even Rachel has a baby. They have 11 sons and at least 1 daughter. But it's not a happy family. They're fighting by having babies. This is kind of like a competition between the sisters and the servants, and Jacob is there. So Jacob has left a home where his brother's trying to kill him, and mother and dad don't agree, and he's gone to set up a new home, and this new home is more dysfunctional than the home he left. How's all this ever gonna get better? What can be done? While all this is going on, he's getting rich. Everything he touches prospers. So he starts off just taking care of his father-in-law's animals, and pretty soon he has more animals than his father-in-law, and his father-in-law starts to get suspicious and starts to think some kind of trickery is going on here. And in fact, the relations deteriorate. Jacob eventually decides he's got to leave. He calls his 4 women together, all the children, and now he's amassed hundreds, perhaps thousands of livestock, and he says, we all got to leave. We can't stay here anymore. Things are too tense at home. We're going to leave. But where is he going to go? Because while he's been here, he's received word that his mother, Rebekah, has died. And Rebekah was the only one who loved him. Is he going to go home? Who's at home? His brother, who wants to kill him, and his father, who really prefers his brother anyway, but he has nowhere else to go. So he begins the journey back home. He leaves Laban and that family, and they head out, this really tribe of people with thousands of animals, begin this long journey back home. As Jacob gets nearer to home and to his brother Esau, he's becoming more and more worried about what kind of reception he might find. So he sends a little scouting party on ahead. He tells them to find Esau and find out what kind of reception he's going to get. Well, pretty soon the scouting party comes back and says, well, we found Esau. And Jacob says, and? They said, well, I don't know what it means, but he's coming here full speed with 400 men. Now Jacob's really worried. Is it all going to catch up with him? Is his brother going to kill him? He divides all his people and animals into two groups, thinking, well, if he kills half of us, at least half of the family will survive. Now they're getting to the point where it's just going to be a matter of hours. Perhaps tomorrow they'll meet. So he sends all of his people and animals across the Jabbok Creek, and he stays alone. It's now night. He thinks he's alone, but suddenly he realizes he's not alone. There's another man there with him. The man grabs him and throws him to the ground, and Jacob fights back. They're wrestling there in the dirt, and neither one seems to be able to win. They wrestle all night long. Finally, the light starts to come up in the eastern sky, and this other man says, let me go. Jacob says, I won't let you go until you bless me. The man says, what's your name? He responded, my name's Jacob. The man said, from now on, your name won't be Jacob. Your name will be Israel. 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 Because you have wrestled with God. Jacob said, what's your name? I guess he didn't need to ask, did he? He didn't get an answer. And then this man was gone. Jacob tried to stand up and found out that something was wrong with his leg. He walked with a limp from then on. He looked back on that place and he called it Peniel, which means the face of God. God had visited Jacob. God with us. Now the morning light was strong. He knew today would be the day that he'd be reunited with his brother Esau or killed by his brother Esau, one of the two. So now he crossed the Jabbok ravine, caught up with his family and the herds. He separated the herds into 5 groups, the sheep ahead, and he sent the sheep on, a whole group of them, a couple hundred sheep he sent on with the shepherds as a gift to Esau, and then he waited a little bit and he sent on a group of goats as a gift to Esau, and then he waited a little bit and he sent on a group of cows, and then he sent on a group of camels, and then he sent on a group of donkeys. He's doing everything he can to calm down his brother, to try one way or another to make it so his brother doesn't kill him. And then he goes out in front, Jacob that is, goes out in front of his family. And he walks toward his brother. He can see him now coming at him with 400 men. As he gets quite near, Jacob drops to the ground, bows down, then he stands up. He walks a few more paces, drops to the ground again, stands up, walks a few more. 7 times in a row he does this. He drops to the ground, then he stands up. On the 7th time, now here is this hairy, smelly brother of his right in front of him. His brother reaches out and hugs him. They hug each other. There is this embrace, there are tears, they kiss each other. Brother, it's been so long, how are you? And they start to catch up. Now everything is not perfectly smooth. I mean, they are still very different men, but they make peace. After God having been with Jacob, they make peace. Peace comes to the household. They don't try to live together, But the way I know that peace came to the household was that sometime later, when Father Isaac finally did die, guess who came together for the funeral? Yeah. Jacob and Esau together buried their father. Is Christmas more than ho, 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 and fa la 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 la? God with us, they say, don't they? God with me, God with you. You know, if that's Christmas, it's a pretty good time. In our family, between us, in the anger, in the jealousy, in the envy, in the who loves me more and who doesn't love me, and who's got the blessing and who doesn't have the blessing, and who's got the birthright and all the stuff and who doesn't, and then God shows up. If that's Christmas, it's a pretty good time of year. Merry Christmas.